Today's wish comes from Laura Gassner Otting. She's the author of a book called Limitless. It will change your life. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for that compliment.
Absolutely. So tell me something before we dig in here that people out there might be surprised to know about you.
Well, most people who meet me today see me as an athlete because that's really part of who I am. But most people would be surprised to know that even though I'm a competitive rower now and I've run 3 marathons, I actually didn't run my first mile until I was almost 40 years old.
No way.
Yes, way, because I was told by a PE coach when I was in, 3rd grade that I wasn't so athletic. So I just assumed I wasn't so athletic.
Can you imagine if you had actually listened to your PE coach's advice? Would it change
You
everything?
know, it's actually an interesting ongoing conversation between me and my husband, who was more athletic growing up. And he's like, you just don't have all the nagging injuries of younger athletes. So I could start fresh with a fresh body. So maybe it's a benefit. I don't know.
And can I ask what your recent time was?
Oh, I am a lousy marathoner. My fastest marathon time was 4:09 in Chicago, but that's because I desperately wanted to get to 4 hours in Boston, and then it was 93 degrees, and I decided that I'd be the mayor of Marathon Town and just kiss every baby and hug every friend, and it took me 5 hours to finish. But when I got to Chicago, I was like, I have to do it in 4 hours because you know the difference between 3:59:59 and 4:00:01 is like 10 years. But I got to a point at mile 23 and it was I'm either going to pass out or get really sick and not finished, or it's going to be 4:00 something. So at mile 23, I'm doing math in my head. I also had a 3rd grade teacher who told me I wasn't very good at math. So this was a challenge. 23 miles, I'm doing math and I'm trying to figure out how to cling to the 4:00 something. And I got a 4:09, 57 or something. I just barely got it. So marathoning, I'm not so good at it. I'll stick to the rowing.
All right. Well, good for you. I'm still working on, getting around the block a little more often. So this show is focused on one question, and we ask it of all of our guests. What is something you wish more people knew?
So your opening question was a great question, because the thing I wish people knew is that the only person who gets to define who they are, the only person who defines what success means for you is you. And over the course of 20 years of interviewing thousands of people in a career of executive search, I was tasked by my clients to call the most successful people, the big, bold headline names, the ones who everyone had heard about, to recruit them to come run some of the largest organizations on the planet. It was my job to call the most successful people, but I was always shocked that the most successful people always took my calls, because despite the fact that they were so successful, they weren't really happy. And it's because they spent their lives pursuing success as defined by everybody else around them.
Why do you think we do that?
I think we do that because we have spent our lives giving votes to people who shouldn't even have voices about what makes sense for us. And we get so accustomed to getting our career advice, our life advice from social media that tells us to follow your passion and lean in and find harmony and find balance and all that nonsense, fridge magnet rationalization of how we should run our lives. It's ridiculous. And if we don't have that, we have these voices in our head from maybe a 3rd grade teacher, maybe a parent, maybe a friend, maybe a spouse who's saying, this is what success should look like. You need to be X, you should be Y. And when we hear these things, they're often from a very young age, when we literally don't have the mental capacity to make good decisions for ourselves. We literally don't have a frontal lobe when we're asked to choose a major, pick a college, find a trade, decide on a path. And so we get to this point and we're like, well, bigger, better, faster, more was supposed to be the idea of success. Why do I have that and why am I not happy? Because we never stop and say, was the definition that was handed to me, this checklist that I've carried around in my back pocket my entire life, we never stop to say, is that the right one for me?
So how do we start paying more attention to the voice inside us, to that true North Star that we all have but don't always follow?
So I often ask people to think about that one moment in their lives. For some, there may be lots of moments, but we all have at least one where we were firing on all cylinders. We were making it rain. We were closing the deal. We were leaping over buildings. Maybe it was on stage. Maybe it was loud. Maybe it was in public. maybe it was private. Maybe you were doing the final touches on the presentation that was going to close the big deal. Maybe you were helping a loved one through a difficult situation. Maybe you were mentoring a colleague. It could be loud, it could be quiet, it could be public, it could be private, it could be any time when you just feel like the very best of who you are was being called upon to solve a problem you actually cared about, and you were being rewarded for it in some way that was personally, financially, karmically meaningful to you. And if you think about who you were in that moment, and rather than leaning into this bigger, better, faster, more, fastest, most expedient path to the corner office as the singular myopic definition of success, and lean into that version of yourself more, you'll actually find yourself not just more successful in the things that you do, but you'll actually be personally more happy and more fulfilled because you're going to be consonant with who you are. You'll be in alignment and in flow with the very best of who you are. So the what you do matches the who you are, and you're no longer fighting to fill in someone else's scorecard.
So it starts with a clear vision of when you are at your best, and then doing the actions that lead to feeling that way and being that way more of the time.
Yeah, so for a lot of this, it comes down to finding what I would mention as consonants. And consonants is this combination of calling, connection, contribution, and control. What is the thing you feel like you were put on this earth to do at this moment in your life? We don't all just have one calling. We all have lots of callings throughout our lives. So what is that thing you really want to solve? How do you do work that actually connects to it so that you feel like you're not wasting your time, but you're doing work that is actually meaningful and impactful and not just busy? How is that work contributing to your life? How does this brand, this paycheck, this task, this job, how does it allow you to live the life you want, to manifest your values on a daily basis, to have the career trajectory you want, or to afford the lifestyle you desire? And then lastly, control. Do your decisions, are they allowing you to have some control over the projects you get assigned to, the people that you get to hang out with, the way that you live your life, so that the work is connecting to the calling and is contributing to your life in the way that you want? And each one of us at every age and at every life stage will have different versions of what consonants will look like. Yours will be different than mine, but yours from 10 years ago will be different than yours 10 years from now. And so it just takes revisiting that every 7 to 10 years or so and saying, what does success really mean for me? Maybe it is the beach house and the Ferrari. Maybe it's moving out to the country and making your own food. Maybe it's, maybe it's having children. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's starting your own business. Maybe it's working for a big company, but everyone's definition will be different. And that's okay. There's no wrong answers. There's just your answer, and your answer is always the right answer.
And especially in today's day and age where everything that we assumed to be true or thought we knew has been thrown into disarray. Having that greater
Yes.
sense of consonance really does ground us in our moment and in our life pursuits.
I think the important question to ask yourself is, when life returns to normal, is the normal I'm returning to really the life that I want? And I'm guessing for a lot of us, I think the answer is no. So this is a great opportunity in this giant press pause time to really think about what success means for you individually, because pursuing that, when you fill your own boxes on your own checklist, you will actually find that real fulfillment and happiness that so many of those people that I called for 2 decades never quite found.
The book is Limitless. The author is Laura Gassner Otting. Laura, thanks for sharing your wish.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe.